I eagerly pulled open the dressing room curtain, only to find that Emily was not inside.
The lady received a phone call and left in a hurry. Didn't she tell you?
I quickly dialed Emily's number. It rang for a long time before she finally picked up.
Sorry, John, something urgent came up at work. Let's try the wedding dresses another time.
Before I could respond, she had already hung up. As a senior executive, Emily was always busy. But in the past, no matter how busy she was, she would never forget to call me. She wouldn't just leave without a word, leaving me to find out her whereabouts from others. My previously joyful mood plummeted. With my fiancée not around, what was the point of trying on suits? As I left the bridal shop, I realized it had started to pour outside. Suddenly, I remembered that the windows in our new home were still open. I had spent half a year meticulously decorating our new home. If it got damaged by the rain, I would be heartbroken. I hurriedly drove over. As soon as I opened the door, I heard Emily's voice coming from the room. Wasn't she supposed to be at work? Puzzled, I then heard another voice, one I had never heard before. It was a man's voice. A sense of unease welled up inside me as I rushed to our new bedroom. Emily was sitting on the bed with a handsome man. She looked at him with eyes full of tenderness and a hint of cautious adoration. The man's smile was filled with affection as he gently caressed Emily's face. They were so close, almost about to kiss. John was looking forward to a day of wedding planning, but things took an unexpected turn.
Relieved, Emily, should we check out the wedding dresses today?
Sorry, John, something urgent came up at work. Let's try the wedding dresses another time.
Before John could respond, Emily had already hung up. As a senior executive, she was always busy. But this time felt different.
She never used to leave without a word. What's changed?
John's joyful mood plummeted. With his fiancée not around, what was the point of trying on suits? He left the bridal shop and realized it had started to pour outside.
The windows in our new home are still open. I need to close them before the rain causes any damage.
John hurriedly drove over to their new home. As soon as he opened the door, he heard Emily's voice coming from the bedroom. Confused, he headed towards the sound.
Wasn't she supposed to be at work?
He then heard another voice, one he had never heard before. It was a man's voice. Rushing to the bedroom, John felt a sense of unease. Emily was sitting on the bed with a handsome man. They were so close, almost about to kiss. Sorry, John, something urgent came up at work. Let's try the wedding dresses another time. Before I could respond, Emily had already hung up. As a senior executive, Emily was always busy. But in the past, no matter how busy she was, she would never forget to call me. She wouldn't just leave without a word, leaving me to find out her whereabouts from others. My previously joyful mood plummeted. With my fiancée not around, what was the point of trying on suits? As I left the bridal shop, I realized it had started to pour outside. Suddenly, I remembered that the windows in our new home were still open. I had spent half a year meticulously decorating our new home. If it got damaged by the rain, I would be heartbroken. I hurriedly drove over. As soon as I opened the door, I heard Emily's voice coming from the room. Wasn't she supposed to be at work? Puzzled, I then heard another voice, one I had never heard before. It was a man's voice. A sense of unease welled up inside me as I rushed to our new bedroom. Emily was sitting on the bed with a handsome man. She looked at him with eyes full of tenderness and a hint of cautious adoration. The man's smile was filled with affection as he gently caressed Emily's face. They were so close, almost about to kiss. After that day, I never saw David again. When Emily was 2 months pregnant, she needed to undergo an ultrasound and routine blood tests. I accompanied Emily to the hospital, registered her, and waited in line, staying by her side the entire time. Like any responsible husband. Though I still often thought about Emily and David. But just as it was Emily's turn for the checkup, her phone rang. Emily glanced at the screen, then looked at me before answering the call.
John, there's an urgent issue with a client at the company. I need to go.
Is it that urgent? Can't you go after the checkup?
Her expression grew more flustered, but she nodded.
Yes, it is.
I wanted to ask what could be more important than our child. But seeing Emily's anxious face, I could only nod. Emily looked guilty, and as she walked away, she glanced back at me. I smiled at her and reminded her to drive safely. I sat alone in the hospital for a long time before driving home. When I got home, I was surprised to see Emily there.
I have to go on a business trip for a month to oversee a project.
I said nothing, just like before, and helped her pack. She stood quietly beside me, opening her mouth several times. But in the end, she said nothing. That night, we lay in bed, and I hugged her from behind. I kissed her hair.
Take care of yourself on the trip. You're pregnant now. Don't overwork yourself.
She nodded and hugged me back, and we fell asleep in each other's arms. The next morning, when I woke up, Emily was already gone. She had left a message on WeChat.
I left.
I stared at my phone for a long time before replying.
Okay.
She didn't respond. I scrolled through our chat history. Once, even a single message from us could fill half the screen. Then it became simpler, 1 or 2 lines, 1 sentence. Now it was just a brief exchange, I left, okay, and that was it. I tossed my phone aside and hugged myself tightly, holding on to the lingering warmth from Emily. At first, Emily would take the initiative to contact me, asking about my well-being. But gradually, she became busier and busier. When I sent her messages, it would take a long time for her to reply. Initially, I thought she was genuinely too busy to pay attention to me.
Until one day, I couldn't help but call her. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. Before I could speak, a lazy male voice came through. Hello?
Although I had only met him once, I immediately recognized David's voice. It felt like I had been struck by lightning, and I sat on the bed, unable to speak for a long time. On Emily's phone, my contact name was husband. David couldn't have missed that. His blatant answer was clearly a provocation.
For the first time, I checked Emily's location. It was at our marital home. My mind exploded into chaos, and I couldn't even remember how I drove there. I stood at the door of our home for a minute. Each second felt like a century. Finally, I mustered the courage to unlock the door with my fingerprint.
Sounds of intimacy came from the bedroom. I took a few steps to the bedroom door and pushed it open. The bedside lamp was on, casting a dim light. David was shirtless, leaning over Emily, obscuring her delicate figure. I felt dizzy, barely able to stand, and my voice turned hoarse.
Emily.
Emily's pupils dilated instantly, and she hurriedly pushed David away. David, however, seemed to have expected my arrival. He quickly pulled the blanket over himself and Emily, then looked at me with a smug expression.
My head buzzed, and I roared, lunging at David and punching him in the face.
John, don't do this.
My fist paused midair as I looked at Emily, feeling both desperate and powerless.
You told me you were on a business trip, that you had work. I pointed at David. Is this your work?
Emily's eyes widened, speechless. Tears streamed down her reddened cheeks.
Don't talk to Emily like that.
This is our family matter. Stay out of it.
I lunged at him, and we started to wrestle. Emily cried, trying to pull us apart, but she slipped and fell to the ground. She immediately curled up, clutching her stomach tightly, and managed to utter a single word.
Pain.
Then, instinctively, she called out.
David.
I was stunned, finally coming to my senses, and looked down at her. Beneath Emily's thin nightgown, a dark red stain was spreading.
Emily!
David quickly shoved me aside, picked Emily up, and rushed out the door. Their child was gone. When Emily woke up, John and David were standing on either side of her hospital bed. She saw John's red eyes and already knew the outcome. She lowered her head in silence.
Emily, our child is gone.
Emily didn't look at John, whether out of reluctance or fear, he couldn't tell.
John, I know I've wronged you. But I've loved David for many years, and now that I finally have the chance, I don't want to let it slip away. Can you understand?
John's heart clenched as he frowned at her. He couldn't understand why she was saying this. It seemed absurd. Their child had just passed away, and she was explaining how much she loved David.
In college, David was the school's heartthrob. I pursued him, and he liked me too, but because of our different social statuses, we couldn't be together. I never forgot him. Recently, he came to me and said he was in the late stages of stomach cancer, with little time left. His dying wish was to spend a simple married life with me. This was our only chance to be together.
What about our child?
John reminded Emily. Because of David, their child was gone.
Do you remember? Because of the man you've loved for years, because of your so-called love, our child was harmed, and now you're only thinking about pleading for him?
Emily sat up and held John's hand.
I'm sorry, John, but this child was never meant to be. Maybe it's fate.
Her words left John momentarily stunned. He stared at her coldly, enunciating each word.
Say that again?
Emily was too scared to speak. John's child was gone. He had once caressed Emily's belly countless times, eagerly awaiting his birth. But now he was gone, without even a chance to see the world. And his own mother said he was never meant to be, that it was fate.
Unforgivable! Unforgivable!
John was on the verge of madness, but the angrier he got, the colder he appeared. He pulled his hand away from Emily's grip and looked at her and David coldly.
Emily, our wedding is off.
John said, raising his trembling hand to point at them.
Remember this, you two took my child away. I will never, ever forgive you.
Sorry, John, something urgent came up at work. Let's try the wedding dresses another time. Before I could respond, Emily had already hung up. As a senior executive, Emily was always busy. But in the past, no matter how busy she was, she would never forget to call me. She wouldn't just leave without a word, leaving me to find out her whereabouts from others. My previously joyful mood plummeted. With my fiancée not around, what was the point of trying on suits? As I left the bridal shop, I realized it had started to pour outside. Suddenly, I remembered that the windows in our new home were still open. I had spent half a year meticulously decorating our new home. If it got damaged by the rain, I would be heartbroken. I hurriedly drove over. As soon as I opened the door, I heard Emily's voice coming from the room. Wasn't she supposed to be at work? Puzzled, I then heard another voice, one I had never heard before. It was a man's voice. A sense of unease welled up inside me as I rushed to our new bedroom. Emily was sitting on the bed with a handsome man. She looked at him with eyes full of tenderness and a hint of cautious adoration, The man's smile was filled with affection as he gently caressed Emily's face. They were so close, almost about to kiss. James had been the one feeding John all this information. Ever since Emily and John parted ways, James had become his informant.
You wouldn't believe it. Emily even cut ties with her parents for that guy.
Really? She gave up everything?
In the end, he took all her money, and she still didn't believe it. She said David must have left quietly to avoid hurting her.
James laughed so hard his eyes turned into slits, clutching his stomach.
Can you believe it? She thought she was in some kind of romantic drama, hiding away to end it all quietly. Ha ha ha, it's like her brain was eaten by zombies.
Maybe she never had a brain to begin with. Otherwise, why would she leave someone as good as me for that guy?
James cursed vehemently, but John could only feel a sense of melancholy. When Emily and he were together, he thought she was perfect in every way. She appeared strong and independent, but was always distant.
She never showed me the passionate love she had for David. She was completely devoted to him, giving him everything within just 2 months of being together. That, I realized, was true love. Emily never truly loved me.
Suddenly, all John's pent-up resentment and anger dissipated.
She didn't love me, which is why she didn't look forward to our future together, didn't care about my feelings, and chose to protect David first.
A few days later, James came rushing to find John.
John, you need to check the university alumni group. It's blowing up.
What's going on? I haven't checked that group in ages.
John logged into his long-unused account and saw the group chat buzzing with activity. About 7 or 8 women were accusing David in the group, planning to take legal action against him.
Over the past year, David had contacted several of his college admirers, claiming he had a terminal illness and wanted to fulfill his last wishes before he passed. He drained them of their money and then disappeared.
And they all thought he had truly passed away?
Yes, until 2 of them mentioned it in conversation and realized they had been deceived. They shared their experiences in the alumni group and vowed to track David down.
The phone call ended abruptly.
Sorry, John. Something urgent came up at work. Let's try the wedding dresses another time.
Emily had hung up before John could respond. As a senior executive, Emily was always busy. But in the past, no matter how busy she was, she never forgot to call John. She would never just leave without a word, leaving John to find out her whereabouts from others.
What's the point of trying on suits without her?
His previously joyful mood plummeted. Leaving the bridal shop, John noticed it had started pouring outside. Suddenly, he remembered the windows in their new home were still open. He had spent half a year meticulously decorating their new home. If it got damaged by the rain, he would be heartbroken. He hurriedly drove over. As soon as he opened the door, he heard Emily's voice coming from the room.
Wasn't she supposed to be at work?
Puzzled, John heard another voice, one he had never heard before. It was a man's voice. A sense of unease welled up inside him as he rushed to their new bedroom. Emily was sitting on the bed with a handsome man. She looked at him with eyes full of tenderness and a hint of cautious adoration. The man's smile was filled with affection as he gently caressed Emily's face. They were so close, almost about to kiss. Back in my room, I couldn't hold back my tears. This was the first time I cried since Emily and I separated, not because of her, but for the child we lost. I felt like a failed father. When I learned about the mishap, I was overwhelmed with sorrow and wanted to cry. But at that time, I had many things to do. I needed to seek justice for my child. However, I couldn't let one person's actions ruin me. After 3 years with Emma, her betrayal left me with nothing but boundless anger. Now that she had faced her consequences, I didn't feel joy, just a sense of relief.
I knew it was all over, and with Emma's retribution, it was time for me to start anew.
I focused on my work. Since love was gone, I needed to hold on to my career. It was the most loyal thing, never betraying me. Previously, I had declined an overseas assignment because of our impending marriage and Emily's pregnancy. This time, I proactively applied for a new position, and my boss approved it. Along with a female colleague, I moved to a new city. The unfamiliar and exciting environment filled me with energy. Life always has its twists and turns, as long as you face them bravely. Unfortunately, I underestimated Emma's persistence. I never expected her to follow me here. She blocked my way after work, grabbing my hand without warning.
John, I heard you crying that day. You must still love me and can't bear to leave me, right?
I couldn't believe she had heard me crying that day and thought it was because of her. What a delusion! I forcefully shook off her hand.
Emma, if you keep pestering me, I'll call the police.
I won't let go, John. Promise me you'll get back together with me, or I won't let go.
I suspected Emma had been mentally affected by David's actions. Why else would she be so fixated on reconciling with me? She knew she had caused me to lose my child, and I would never forgive her for that. She knew she had cheated before our wedding, causing me immense pain. How could I ever be with her again?
Emma, if you're not well, seek treatment. Stop bothering me.
Just then, someone rushed over like a gust of wind and slapped Emma across the face. Emma clutched her face in pain, glaring at the newcomer.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. What are you doing here? I gave Sophia a grateful look.
Who are you? What right do you have to interfere in my relationship with my boyfriend?
Let me remind you, we broke up the moment you slept with David. To avoid any misunderstandings, I made my relationship with Emma clear. I had just started at the new company and didn't want Emma to affect my work.
Emma's face turned red with embarrassment, but she still wouldn't give up.
John, I know I was wrong. I came all this way to ask for your forgiveness.
I will never forgive you. Please don't bother me again, or I won't be so polite.
Emma's expression finally changed. Fearing I might say more to her detriment, she left without another word.
Is this guy out of his mind?
Sophia watched Emma walk away with a scowl.
Thanks for helping me out today. Let me treat you to dinner.
Dinner together? Sure, let's celebrate our new beginning.
What new beginning?
Of course, a new start at work. What else did you think it was?
John smiled, not bothering to respond. She was 3 years younger than him, and he had mentored her during her internship. She always joked around with him, never taking things too seriously. When he volunteered to join the new company, he hadn't expected her to come along as well. Sophia kept insisting that she would treat him next time. Throughout the meal, John felt relaxed and happy. Sophia, with her beauty, energy, and humor, always knew how to make him laugh without being obvious. She didn't ask about his personal life, even though the breakup with Emma wasn't his fault. He didn't want to expose his private matters to others. Sophia's sense of boundaries made him feel comfortable and at ease. Work at the new company went smoothly, and John was busy every day, leaving little time to think about other things. A week passed, and he gradually adapted to his new job and life, feeling rejuvenated. The company provided apartments for both Sophia and him, and they lived next door to each other, naturally walking home together after work. Unexpectedly, Emma blocked their way at the entrance of the apartment complex. John didn't want to engage with her and tried to walk past, but she grabbed his hand. This time, she didn't succeed because Sophia stepped in front of him.
What's your problem?
Why are you still bothering John?
Sophia's tone was icy as she separated them.
Let's commute together to prevent Emma from causing any more trouble.
I'm not afraid of anything, but I appreciate your concern. Having you around makes me feel more at ease. Emma, I've already made things clear. Why can't you just let it go?
I won't forgive you. We're over. I don't love you anymore. Face reality.
Why should I forgive your mistake? I cherished our relationship, but now I'm done. You're not worth my love anymore. Some mistakes shouldn't be made even once and don't deserve forgiveness. Emma, face reality and don't appear in front of me again.
John walked past her, heading into the complex. He thought he had made himself clear, and she should have some dignity left not to bother him again. Unfortunately, he was wrong. She had no shame.
Is it because you have someone new? All this talk about mistakes and not loving me anymore is just because you have another woman.
I turned back in disbelief, looking at Emily's face, which now seemed so unfamiliar. This was the woman I had loved for 3 years and had been eager to marry. When did she become so unrecognizable? Or had I never truly seen her for who she was?
You're right, John is my boyfriend now. Stop bothering him.
Sophia spoke before I could say anything. She walked over to me, naturally wrapping her arm around mine and giving me a reassuring look.
Someone else will cherish what you don't.
What are you talking about, Sophia?
I know John is great, and you want to win him back. But life isn't a novel. You can't just repent and say a few meaningless words to make everything right again. He's a person with thoughts and feelings, not a tool for your emotional performances. He has his own perceptions, choices, and decisions. Don't come bothering him again, or I won't be polite.
With that, Sophia pulled me away, not giving Emily a chance to say another word. My mind was in a daze, and I could only follow her numbly as we walked through the neighborhood. Emily stood there, her mouth open but unable to speak. Eventually, she slumped down, watching us leave together, and began to cry.
Thank you for stepping in.
Who said I was just stepping in? I meant every word.
What do you mean? Weren't you just saying those things to make her give up?
Sophia suddenly dropped her nonchalant expression and looked at me seriously.
John, I like you. Will you accept me?
Her eyes were so earnest, not joking at all, and I felt a bit flustered.
Actually, you don't know this, but I liked you from the first time I saw you. But you had a girlfriend then, so I didn't say anything. When I heard you were getting married, I was so upset I couldn't sleep, even dreaming about whether I should crash the wedding. Later, when I found out you broke up, I was overjoyed. And when I heard you applied to transfer here, I followed.
Every word Sophia said was sincere, her voice soft and gentle, as if afraid of scaring me. I felt my heart racing. Perhaps this was what it felt like to be passionately loved.
John, will you accept me? Let me love you and be with you.
She asked, her deep eyes drawing me in like a whirlpool. I almost nodded, but in the end, reason prevailed over emotion.
I'm sorry, Sophia. I'm not ready for a relationship right now.
I said, quickly retreating to my room. She was so young, her love so intense it almost consumed me. But I had just come out of a failed relationship and couldn't dive into a new one so soon, even though I admitted I was a bit moved. The next day, Sophia knocked on John's door as usual.
Good morning, John. Don't feel burdened. Liking you is my business. After all, we have a long future ahead.
But as diligent workers, we can't let this affect our jobs, right?
John thought she made sense. He opened the door, and neither of them mentioned her sudden confession from the previous day. They ate breakfast together as usual and went to work. In the evening, James called.
John, Emma, she had an accident. She jumped from a building.
Because of David?
Who knows? It's a pity, though. She didn't, she's paralyzed. She'll spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair.
John's feelings were complicated.
John, do you think this is karma?
I don't know. I don't want to think about it anymore. None of this has anything to do with me now.
Sometime later, John learned that David had been arrested for fraud.
The wealthy girlfriend he chose during college had fallen from grace after her family went bankrupt. She coerced him into swindling money to support her lifestyle. Hard to believe the campus heartthrob fell so low.
Over the past 6 months, John's career had been smooth sailing. He was promoted to department manager. Sophia had always been by his side.
Sophia, let's celebrate my promotion. Dinner's on me.
I'd love to.
After dinner, they took a walk home. John took out the flowers he had prepared.
Sophia, I have feelings for you. Will you be with me?
Sophia was so shocked she couldn't speak. Her eyes welled up with tears as she nodded in agreement.
One failure shouldn't make me reject love. Sophia is not Emily. As for the future, I don't want to think too much. I'll put my heart into it and believe I will get what I deserve.